Taking a look at your top story this hour and what appears to be sending all okay signals, President Robert Mugabe made his first public appearance since the military intervention in Zimbabwe. President Mugabe attended the graduation ceremony at the Zimbabwe Open University. 93-year-old Mugabe arrived at the ceremony in the capital Harare, dressed in a blue academic gown and a hat. There was no immediate indication of what his appearance at the ceremony meant for the military takeover of the country. The army took over late on Tuesday after Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa was sacked. It was also believed that Mugabe's wife Grace was touted to replace her husband as the president. Mugabe was confined to his house, but yesterday's state-run media showed pictures of him with General Constantino Chiwenga at the State House. Analysts say the military leadership was strongly opposed to Grace's rise, while Mnangagwa has close ties with the defense establishment. Mnangagwa, who is a leading candidate to succeed Mugabe, flew back to Harare on Thursday after fleeing the country when he was sacked last week.
The Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has made his first official public visit at the Zimbabwe Open University, who is here to officiate the graduation. Now, as predicted, the media has been prohibited from entering this area, and the area has been cordoned off. This is Mazieta for ANN7, Harare, Zimbabwe.
At the moment, what we have received, the information is that the situation is still as it was yesterday. There is peace in the country. People are doing their business as usual. With regards to the negotiations that have been going on, there is no report that has emerged, and we believe that once all is said and done, a communication will be given by those that are involved in the negotiation. We haven't received any communication. All what we have seen is that the defense forces have indicated that they've made a significant progress in the negotiations, but they did not divulge what sort of progress they've made, and we await for their communication as well as the communication from those that are involved.
Now let's take a look at some of the so-called casualties of the military intervention. First Lady of Zimbabwe, Grace Mugabe, the President of ZANU-PF National Youth League, Kudzai Chipanga, Higher Education Minister Jonathan Moyo, and the Finance Minister Ignatius Chombo. SADC has called upon all stakeholders in Zimbabwe to settle the political challenges through peaceful means. The SADC meeting's objective was to consider the unfolding situation in the Republic of Zimbabwe. SADC says it has noted with great concern the situation. The organ says after considering the unfolding situation in Zimbabwe, it recommended convening an urgent extraordinary SADC summit. Now let's take a look at some key pointers from the statement. SADC reaffirmed its commitment to AU Constitutive Act and its democratic principles as they relate to the unconstitutional removal of democratically elected governments. SADC further reaffirmed the need for member states to remain guided by their constitutions. SADC has called on all stakeholders in Zimbabwe to settle the political challenges through peaceful means. They recommended the convening of an urgent extraordinary SADC summit.
We meet here this morning at a time when one of our sister countries, Zimbabwe, is experiencing political and security challenges. Mr. President, we note with great concern the unfolding political developments in Zimbabwe and hope that they would not lead to unconstitutional change of government. We urge all the parties to ensure that maintenance of peace and security as enshrined in their constitution is not compromised. As SADC, in keeping with our established protocols and processes, we stand ready to provide all the necessary support to the people of Zimbabwe to resolve the current political impasse.
Well, joining me now in studio, Tapiwa Diamond, political analyst, just joining us to give us some more information on the situation in Zimbabwe currently. Now, let's just take a look, and very welcome to the studio in the first place.
Much.
Well, let's take a look at what does Robert Mugabe's appearance today at the Open University mean for the military takeover in Zimbabwe?
Probably what I could start on saying is that there's not been a coup in Zimbabwe. The reason why we saw the president appearing today is because there's not been a coup. So this has always been an internal battle, the succession battle, which had gone out of bounds. And Emmerson Mnangagwa being kicked out of ZANU-PF, and his allies are from the army. He's friends with the army. That's why the army came in, and they're just protecting their interests. They are protecting the wealth that they've amassed in the country. That is why they still need the support of Emmerson Mnangagwa. So it has been an internal battle within ZANU-PF.
And what role do you think the army is now currently playing in Zimbabwe?
I think, first and foremost, I would want to say there's been mixed emotions within the community of Zimbabwe. We're talking about hope. Everyone in Zimbabwe was very hopeful and is still hopeful that the current set of circumstances are going to change. You know, people were praying, people have been waiting for this day where Mugabe was put in a corner. But the sighting of Mugabe today at the graduation ceremony, it would send something to the community. It's very disturbing to see that, because the assumption was that the army was going there into the country, cornering Mugabe with the purposes of upholding the constitution, with the purposes of changing the current set of circumstances in the country.
Well, joining us on the phone line also now is Kennedy Mandaza, ZANU-PF spokesperson. A very good evening to you, Mr. Kennedy. Now, Mr. Mandaza, let's just go through what is the message to all Zimbabweans, what is being sent to all Zimbabweans through the appearance of Robert Mugabe at the Open University today.
Good evening to your viewers. The presence of the President Mugabe today at the graduation ceremony is an affirmation of what the defense forces, when they made their pronouncement of their intervention, that they would not cause any harm to the president. It is an affirmation that they have provided the security that is needed, and it is an affirmation that they had no intention at all, as specified in their pronouncement, that they were not targeting the president at all. He remains the president of the country. He remains the commander-in-chief, and as a result, he is entitled, therefore, to continue to do his duties, as they had also mentioned that each and everyone should continue to serve his purpose as enshrined in the Constitution. And it is also an affirmation to each and every member of Zimbabwe and even the international community that whatever is happening in Zimbabwe is supposed to take cognizance of the SADC, AU, and international protocols, as well as abiding by the Constitution of Zimbabwe, as well as that of the party ZANU-PF.
The possible theories that have come up that a deal has been made actually with the army, how true is that?
ZANU-PF has not made any formal pronouncement of any deal. The military has not made any pronouncement of any deal. And even the president himself has not made any pronouncement of any deal. So whatever is circulating at the moment, there are hearsays, there are speculations that people are making, probably expressing their own opinions on what they would want to see. But I would rather say that people should be patient as the events unfold. I think the necessary communication will be made by all the interested parties in this particular mission that has been embarked.
Mr. Mandaza, I know you said that we should not actually lend our ears to rumors, but just around the news about an impeachment of the president again doing the rounds, what do you have to say about that?
This is a follow-up of what has been transpiring in the country, I think, today, because all our provincial councils have gone out and said, and they are making their own resolutions. And those resolutions are going to be affirmed by the Central Committee,
and they shall follow all the protocols according to the constitution of ZANU-PF. And any impeachment, if it is to follow, people should wait until the pronouncement has been made by the highest policy-making body, which is the Central Committee, which may, as stated, sit on Sunday.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the phone line. That was Kennedy Mandaza, ZANU-PF spokesperson. This is the message coming from ZANU-PF, and they are clearing there as to some of the theories doing the rounds as to the situation in Zimbabwe currently. Also joining us on the phone line is 8 and 7 anchor Audrey Shimwanda from Zimbabwe. A very good evening to you, Audrey, and thank you once again for joining us and for giving us such great updates at the situation in Zimbabwe. So let me just ask you, Audrey, we've heard now from you earlier and also from ZANU-PF spokesperson that we should not listen to rumors and we should wait for an official statement. Do you have any more updates for us from Zimbabwe? Audrey, I do hope that you can hear me. Just as to if there's any more updates coming from Zimbabwe as to anything, new developments happening that side? We do seem to be struggling. We will try and get Audrey back. But let's continue with our studio chat. We are still joined by Tapiwa Diamond, the political analyst. Now, let's just go back to Mnangagwa, who has been rumored to take over from Mugabe. He flew back to Zimbabwe. What does this mean for the situation in Zimbabwe at the moment?
I think first and foremost, you have to look at the constitution. The constitution of Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe is a constitution of supremacy. The constitution says, when the president steps down, the first vice president comes and takes over. And the same applies when the first vice president steps down. It means the second vice president automatically comes into place. So currently, I believe, because now there's a lack of information during the rounds, what I believe now has happened is that the army, when they went in, trying to push and trying to make sure that Emmerson Mnangagwa goes in, the constitution does not allow that. You know, if they decide to take Mugabe out, it automatically means now that the vice president, the current vice president, who is President Boko, Vice President Boko, is the one who has to come in. And that is what people from the army, that is what they don't want. They want to put Emmerson Mnangagwa, but they cannot do it following the constitution. So I think they've been put in a very tight corner. That is why now we are coming to this.
We also know there were some rumors that Grace Mugabe would take over from her husband, and we do know that the military is opposed to Grace's rule. Why do you think they are so opposed to her rule?
The reason why the military is opposed to that is because there's two factions. There's always been a succession debate happening in ZANU-PF, where we had the G40 on one side. The G40 is led by Grace Mugabe, and we also have the Lacoste, which is led by Emmerson Mnangagwa with the support of the army. So that has been the case which has been happening in Zimbabwe. And we no longer believe in monarchs in Africa. We no longer believe in a dynasty. So the Mugabe family had done ills in Zimbabwe. They had butchered people. There was no respect of the constitution in the country. And that is the case. That is why the nation is on edge. And that is why, as well, the disgruntled ZANU-PF supporters, ZANU-PF section, which was supporting Emmerson Mnangagwa, is coming in, not for the interest of the people, no. This is politics of the stomach. They're just trying to protect their interests, and they know that Grace Mugabe would not support that. So that is why we have this current set of circumstances in the country.
Well, joining us again on the phone line is Audrey Shimwanda, AN7 anchor there from Zimbabwe, giving us an update. A very good evening to you, Audrey. I do hope that you can hear me now. Well, Audrey, just to ask you...
I can hear you loud and clear.
Just to ask you, my first question that I posed to you is that you have said, and then the ZANU-PF spokesperson just confirmed, that we should not listen to rumors. We should wait for official statements to come out. So just in regards to Zimbabwe and you being on the ground, what new developments have been made there?
Well, these are the latest developments that I can confirm, Stefani. The 10 provinces of ZANU-PF have all resolved to expel President Gabriel Mugabe from the party. And as it appears, they're just waiting for the Central Committee to meet perhaps tomorrow to finalize that agreement. But I can confirm that the provinces have voted in that manner. That is the progress that has happened in the past few hours, coming from the war veterans, calling for him to step down, giving him an ultimatum that if he doesn't step down, then they'll go forward with whatever action that they have been threatening, calling on all Zimbabweans to gather on Saturday, tomorrow, at Zimbabwean grounds and march to the State House and demand for President Robert Mugabe to step down.
And also just in regards as to SADC's role into this whole situation, what is the feeling on the ground there? Is it too little too late for them to actually have any input in this now?
Do you know that the issue with SADC, Steph, is not very clear at the moment. You do know that the Troika Summit resolved to meet again as heads of states to continue deliberating on the issue on Zimbabwe. At the same time, we had a convoy sent by President Zuma from South Africa, obviously in his capacity as the chair of SADC. It appears the two are not coherent with regards to what their resolutions for Zimbabwe are, or what they have decided as both teams that are supposed to be mediating and making sure that the process in Zimbabwe is a democratic one and a constitutional way with regards to whether, be a transition of power or reinstating President Mugabe back into power.
Well, thank you, Audrey. Please do stay on the line with us. We still have Kennedy Mandaza, ZANU-PF spokesperson, also on the phone line. Mr. Mandaza, let me just ask you, there is a rally in support, like we've heard from Audrey as well now, tomorrow, in support of the military. What is your reaction to this?
The meeting that is taking place tomorrow is a meeting that has been called by war veterans, and it is calling upon all members of Zimbabwe, regardless of their political affiliation, to come in solidarity of the military for what they've done. And the war veterans have said they have a message that they would want to give to the generality of the people of Zimbabwe, as well as explain what is currently going on. And it is within their purview, within their mandate to do that. And we hope they've done all the clearances with the police, and they are entitled to meet the people of Zimbabwe, given that they've played a very important role. They've played an important role in the liberation of Zimbabwe. So it's still okay for us as in ZANU-PF because they are part of us.
Okay, well, let me take our chat back to studio now. Tapiwa, what do you have to say to Mr. Kennedy Mandaza and the rally happening tomorrow in support of the military? What is your comments on that?
Okay, I think probably we need to define two things here. The army is not pushing the agenda of the Zimbabweans. The army is pushing the agenda of a certain section in ZANU-PF which is aligned to Emmerson Mnangagwa. The call by the war veterans tomorrow to go and march. I heard my colleague now, Mr. Mandaza, saying that they've had clearance from the police. Which police is he talking about? Because as far as the last we heard was that the army had taken over. The army had taken over the policing and all the police enforcement responsibilities. So the army is there to protect the interests of Emmerson Mnangagwa. That is clear and that is straightforward, So for me, it's mind-boggling for him to say that they got clearance. And speculation is always speculation. But of course, in the absence of enough information, people are bound to speculate. The current speculation is that they've given Robert Mugabe an ultimatum for him to step down, or else they're going to remove him using the constitution. Because they have failed, the army has failed in an attempt to push him and replace him with Emmerson Mnangagwa. They failed because of the constitution. So now they are looking for other methods, other means of removing him from the office.
And also the role of SADC, I did ask this to our anchor Audrey Shimwanda, who is in Zimbabwe at the moment, but the role of SADC, do you think that they should have played a bigger role in this? Do you think that there must have been an earlier intervention from them, or do you think that them not doing anything was okay?
For the purposes of respecting protocols and for respecting bodies which are there, SADC will always be there. But if we look at the role that SADC plays, SADC does not play a role. The role that they just play is to go around into different countries, exchange the chairmanship, and just drink tea. When countries are burning, SADC does not take any resolution. They have never taken a resolution. The same applies to the African Union. They are there. Yes, it's a body of nations which is there. But in terms of making the ultimate resolutions, they have not done anything. So they're just toothless dogs. So specifically speaking about Zimbabwe, SADC would not do any change in in the country of Zimbabwe. Because there are other issues like them, other issues where SADC has to come in terms of the economy, the movement of people. SADC has not come up with a resolution to that. And ECOWAS is doing something fantastic up there, you know. So as far as I'm concerned, SADC has not done anything. Looking at the African Union, probably would say last year there was an issue of the migrants, which was a burning issue, but the African Union did not come up with one resolution. There was no policy. They did not address the agenda of the African migrant community. So these are just toothless dogs.
I know you've said that the military is, according to your views, it's only looking out for the interest of Mnangagwa. But do you think that this whole situation has opened up the doors for other parties, other opposition parties actually, to come in and say, well, look, the relationship in ZANU-PF is not as strong as it should be?
ZANU-PF will always be ZANU-PF. For me, I think this ZANU-PF is reforming itself. We are going to have another ZANU-PF because Emmerson Mnangagwa, if or when Emmerson Mnangagwa comes in, he was a close friend of Mugabe for a very long time. He's still going to implement the same policies. And he has got a very bad record in terms of human rights. It's clear, it's there, everyone knows. What Zimbabwe needs now is a turnaround. What Zimbabwe needs now is to have a roadmap that is going to align the constitution and certain institutions. There is a need for a voter registration which is fair. There is a need for all those mechanisms to come into place for the economy of the country to come up again. The country had outrageous inflation rates, you know. So all those things happened. The people have suffered. The people have been quiet. But one day, change will come. One day, people will revolt.
Well, thank you so much for joining me in studio, my guest, Tapiwa Diamond, just for giving us some more information on the story. He will be staying with us, but let's take a look at the Mugabe's profile now. Robert Mugabe has been the president of Zimbabwe for nearly 4 decades. His presidency has been clouded by controversy and consistent calls to relinquish power. As the world watches the current developments in the embattled country, we take a look at the presidency of Robert Gabriel Mugabe over the decades.
Robert Gabriel Mugabe, swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Zimbabwe and observe the laws of Zimbabwe.
A defiant Mugabe, unperturbed by criticism of his decade's rule, taking oath of office. Having dominated Zimbabwe's politics for nearly 4 decades, he is regarded as a controversial and divisive figure. Praised as a revolutionary hero of the African liberation struggle, the longtime leader played a pivotal role in the liberation of Zimbabwe from British colonial rule, imperialism, and white minority rule. At the time of his 1980 election victory, Mugabe was internationally acclaimed as a revolutionary hero embracing racial reconciliation. At the first decade of his governance, he was referred to as Africa's most progressive leader. Fast forward to years that would follow, the one-time beacon of hope would change the tide from a hero to what his detractors now call a tyrant, often lambasted for non-free and fair electoral triumphs.
As for those old Western countries who happen to hold a different, negative view of our electoral process and outcome, well, there is not much we can do about them. We dismiss them as the vile ones whose moral turpitude we must mourn.
Zimbabwe was once the breadbasket of Africa, but it's been slammed by industrial mismanagement, food shortages, a collapsed currency, and rampant corruption under Mugabe's presidency. His handling of the country's farming sector was a turning point that contributed to an economic catastrophe. According to the latest research, the economy is equivalent to 33% of the GDP. Yet growth has stalled in recent years. The economy grew by a measly 1.1% in 2015 and by 0.5% last year. Millions of Zimbabweans, many of them skilled, fled to South Africa and elsewhere in the world. But now, after 37 years consistently in power, Mugabe's future hangs in the balance. Will he resign, stay in power until the next elections, or will he be forced into exile? We wait. Bureau Report, ANN 7.
This opportunity just to thank my guests for joining me in studio, and also Audrey Shimanda on the phone line, and also Kennedy Mandaza joining us on the phone line, giving ZANU-PF's official statement on the situation in Zimbabwe. Well, that's all we have for you on Newsroom Live tonight. Stay tuned. Up next is Cindy Mabe with Prime.